Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship podcast. I am Chip Brown of Horns 24/7, joined today to talk a little Texas baseball with former Longhorn and 20-year Texas State coach Ty Harrington, fresh from a gathering of his Bobcats. Ty, how you doing?
Well, I'm better now. I love the way you use the word fresh. And so I am had a big evening last night with a bunch of former players and a lot of fans. And it was just a great time for me and to go back and spend some time with some guys. And we spent a lot of time, probably too much time last night together. But I'm up and running, certainly excited and proud you invited me to come on your show.
Well, I love talking baseball with you because you were a part of as a player, you were part of Texas Longhorns teams that went to the College World Series in 84, 85, 87. And of course, your incredible coaching career there at Texas State. But, you know, I look up and I see the Texas Longhorns preseason #1 in collegiate baseball's poll, in D1 baseball's poll. And when you, as a coach, see that, is it usually because of pitching like it is in football? You know, if you have the returning quarterback who's had some success, give me your thoughts on being that preseason #1 team.
I think if you take the momentum coming out of last year, first and foremost, competing for a national title. Sometimes people lose sight of how precious that is and how hard that is to be the last man standing. And they made a bid to do that, and how exciting it was for all of us as fans, alumni, everybody in the Longhorn Nation in college baseball. Right? It was like the college baseball was right again. You know, UT's in Omaha and playing for national titles. But I think even beyond the momentum, when you start to look at personnel, and most people do start with pitching, and you can start with having Stevens and Hansen back, and you got to replace Ty Madden. Now, I'm going to say this. I thought Ty Madden, outside of having the greatest first name in the history of the world, I thought that he on Friday nights you could book that it was going to be 7 innings, and it was going to be 7 innings of just beating you down with his fastball and his breaker and his competitive emotion. So they've got to replace that. I think if you look at the 3 starters they have right now, whether they take Witt out of the bullpen and move him to a starting role, which I think maybe they're trying to do. There's 3 really, really, really quality starters in there that have got a lot of experience pitching in big-time baseball. So that's a great place to start, right? Pitching and defense, and the pitching side of it, having to, maybe if they do take Witt out of the pen, who's going to go in? Because, last year when you got to the 7th, when they started rolling relievers out there in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning last year, they were the same as the guys that were starting or better at times. So it was you were playing a 6-inning game against Texas at times last year because the back end with Witt and Nixon were so good. And so pitching is a great place to start. It always is going to be the difference, when you get into championships, is being able to hold guys to 3 runs. And being able to, calculate your offense off of that. But the second half of that is, you hear it all the time, is that pitching and defense, their defense is absolutely through the roof. I don't know if I've watched a defensive team play at the caliber that they play, with the insight, the intuitive, the physical abilities, the coach part of it. Every piece of a defensive team you could put out there, these guys possess. So you lose your third baseman last year, so they go out and they get a grad transfer from Kansas. And I had a chance to watch that young man practice, twice, I think. I'd
Yes,
already knew
Skylar
about him as a
Messinger
player. Yeah, and
from Kansas.
I mean every bit, and you guys got like O'Dowd and Staley, and those guys as your backups. Those guys are starting just about anywhere else in college baseball. So they have depth. They do play tremendous defense. They don't. Chip, when you get into championship baseball, at the end of a game, a coach goes to his team and he talks about all the things that we got to do better than this. We got to do this. We did this wrong. Pointing out all the things we got to improve on. They don't make those defensive mistakes that at the end of the day, as a coach, you go, well, if we'd have just done this, we might have won that game. And it is so impressive to see how they manage the baseball and how detailed they are around that baseball and how they do things. And it's fun to watch. David's always been a tremendous, preacher of defense. Man, then you add Tulo in there, who is a really detail-oriented person when it comes to defense. And, of course, Sean, I think, has done an unbelievable job of the pitching staff, too, by the way, and the way they managed that staff last year. So to answer your question, a long answer, you start with the pitching side of it. Yes, you're 100% correct. To me, one of the most impressive things, and again, I'm a defensive-oriented guy, and I love the beauty of it and what it really looks like when it's really clean and good. Their defense is through the roof. And then if you draw a big circle around that whole field, position player-wise, every one of those guys on that field are draft-eligible potential baseball players. I don't know that I've seen that kind of balance before in the Texas lineup in a long time.
Yeah, and talking to David Pierce, he I'm kind of bouncing around here, but he loves his outfield.
Yeah.
When you talk about Eric Kennedy and Hodo, and now
Yep.
you've got Austin Todd back for a 6th year, Ty.
That's over half a decade, by the way.
I mean, Austin Todd, the guy is he's immortal.
He is.
But what do you like about that outfield?
Man, I'm going to tell you what I like about it. Try to hit a ball in the gap and try to get one to land on the turf. Those guys, they're so fast and they break on the ball and they got so much experience. I mean, and think about with Kennedy with being left-handed and playing left field and being able to cover the line with his glove side. Yeah, Hodo in center field now that can really, really, really fly. And then Austin Todd, along with being able to run and being incredibly athletic, his intuition is so unbelievable out there. 6 years is a lot of experience, right? That's a minor league baseball player or a major league baseball player playing right field. And the same with Kennedy, because Kennedy's had a lot of at-bats and a lot of, fly balls hit his way. The difference is games get separated in the 5th and 6th innings sometimes when somebody hits a double that your outfield play is just not quite fast enough. You've seen it, and it just gets out of the reach of the center fielder or the right fielder for a double, changes the whole game in the 5th inning, right, with a runner on first base and 2 outs or something. I challenge you to try to get a ball that's going to land out there because those guys can really, really run. They take tremendous angles at the ball, and they know what they're doing. Once they have the ball in their hand, they do a tremendous ball, throwing the ball back in and knowing what to do with it. So it's a great place to start. It's exciting. If I was a pitcher, I'd sit out there and I'd throw fly balls, outs to them all the time because they're going to go catch it.
So when you look at what Texas lost from last year, and they were this close to beating Mississippi State and getting into that championship series. Of course, Mississippi State goes on to win the national championship. They lose Zach Zubia. They lose Cam Williams, as you mentioned, from third base. They lost Mike Antico, their leadoff guy, and 41 stolen bases. I mean, that is a ton of production right there. As a coach, that's a lot. I mean, we're talking, these are 50 RBI guys and home run guys. I mean, they were all 10 home run guys. So that's a lot to lose, isn't it?
It is a lot to lose. And one of the most impressive things about Texas last year's offense, in my opinion, again, this is just my opinion, when you look at them, you could get through their lineup once, maybe twice, but they just wore you down trying to get through that lineup. That 3rd and 4th time, they had such long at-bats. I could go back. I don't remember if it was a regional. I think it was. Zubia had like a 12-pitch at-bat in an RBI situation. I think it was a super regional, if I'm not mistaken. And then blisters the ball back through the middle, scores 2. And I remember thinking to myself, and they'd gotten a walk, I think, early in that inning, and just a long, drawn-out. They knew what they were capable of doing and trying to teach young hitters to stand in there, take a walk if it's there, drag bunt if it's there, and you get into hot counts or, being able to really look in an area for a ball that you really want to get after and drive and really get your barrel after. And that, I thought they did such an unreal job. And to your point, Zubia and Cam were those guys right there in the middle of that. And then Tico, if you go back and look at his batting average, it wasn't great, right? He got off to a really, really slow start. Go in there and look at his strikeout walk ratio. I don't know that I've seen a kid with a strikeout walk ratio like that in a really, really long time. And his ability to steal bags off the idea he was going to take a walk. Remind me of the old Kobe Curlin days. And like 100 and something walks one year, like our senior year or something like that in 87. But point is they had long, unbelievable drawn out bats. So now you got to go replace these guys. Melendez probably moves over to first base. Hodo moves up, to center field. And Mecklinger coming in from Kansas. So they've got the guys that it just shows you the depth of that team they had last year. I think those guys will be just as good. And I really and truly think that offense might even be better because of the experience and the amount of at-bats they had last year going into this year. And so, yeah, hard to replace, no question about it. But that's why you go out and recruit great players. That's why you go out and find the kind of guys you need to replace the guys that are leaving. And you just kind of restock the shelf. When you get right down to it, it's exactly what they did. It's impressive. When you get out there to see these guys live, I got to watch them take BP and take some ground balls maybe last Sunday, I think it was. It is really impressive. It really is. Their batting practice, and now this is a coach talking because I get a little different joy out of watching different things, maybe other people, but their BP was so impressive. And then I think they went out there in an inter-squad game and faced a left-handed kid. He was an average velo guy. He has to survive on getting guys out on the outer half of the plate. I looked up, and that starting lineup had 4 straight base hits down the right field line, all right-handed hitters. And at that point in time, those kids, number one, are locked in, but they're going in there with a plan. I'm going to take the outside part of the plate away. I'm going to make that the middle part of the plate for me. I'm going to move up in my mind, maybe even my body, but I'm hitting that ball to right field. And I'm going to take that side of the plate away. And they had a tremendous plan going into it, and they executed. That's the experience part, Chip, that when you're an experienced team, you might get me once, you might get me twice, but that third time I'm going to stay after you, which is what they did last year. And again, I'll be totally shocked if they don't repeat that same kind of attitude and that same kind of plan that they've had. That's a part I think that Tulo and David have done such a great job. And I will say this probably more than one time to you. I think David Pierce does an unbelievable job of, he knows what his guys are capable of doing. He knows what each of them can do. He gets them in those situations. When those guys get into those situations, he takes advantage of what they can really do well. And sometimes that's hard to do because coaches, we start asking kids to do things they don't do as well. He knows what that is. He knows his personnel well. He puts them in a great situation, and he allows them to go out there and execute it in a competitive way.
That's great stuff right there. We'll come back. We'll take a quick break with Ty Harrington talking some Texas baseball right here on the Flagship podcast. And if you are watching us on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel, we will roll on. And Ty, I want to get back, we're talking about David Pierce, and you mentioned he knows what guys do well and keeps them right there. What, after watching him work now for a few years, what do you like about David Pierce in the way that he's leading the program?
Well, first and foremost, you got to have great players, right? So his staff and David and him are going out and they're locating the best players, as they should, right? It's the University of Texas. So that gives you, when that orange phone rings, you immediately get people's attention. And they've done a great job with that. And not just because, you can get out there and get some of the best players, but you got to evaluate them, make sure they fit for what you want in that program and what you're trying to do or what piece you're looking for to build off of. And I think they do a tremendous job of evaluating. I think they do a great job of, presenting what University of Texas history is, what it means, and what it's going to look like moving forward. They embrace the idea of they've won championships there before. They promote the idea that it's one of the greatest universities and certainly one of the most historic baseball programs in the country, and they promote it, right? And they do a great job of that. And so it gets kids' minds like, yeah, I want to go play, for national titles. That's what everybody wants to do. And I think they do a good job with it. And then, like I said, the evaluation part of it is the biggest piece, right? Because you can't miss. If 11.7, now it's changing with NIL some, but with 11.7, you really couldn't afford to miss very much. And so you had to be right on. And so the evaluation is a big part of it. I think they do a good job. And I just think David sees the game in a really, really simple way, and he uncomplicates it, right? So these players today, and Chip, I'm probably going too far one way or another right now. These players have so much noise in their heads right now about, you could one click and you can pick up a ton of information about anything you want, right? And these guys live in a world where they've had so many, other coaches, hitting coaches, throwing coaches, basement, whatever, getting this point, or there's so much information. And I think he does a beautiful job of keeping the noise away from them and keeping him focused on what they're trying to do and how they want to do it. And then I just think he simplifies it for them in their brain. I think he puts a plan out there. Everybody gets tired of hearing this, but the reality is he puts a plan in front of them within his staff, and those guys know what they're doing. You watch them go out and practice. You watch them before games. You watch them during games. There's very few missed thoughts that those young men have when they're out there on that field. So they're well coached. They're well drilled. He simplifies it for them. And then the last piece of this that I know David is really, really good at, because he and I've had a handful of conversations. It's impressive to listen to talk. He is really good at the emotional side of the game with those guys. He knows how to challenge them. He knows how to pat them on the back. He knows how to put his arm around them. He knows how to love on them, and he knows how to push them. And nowadays, you have to be able to adapt to a young man's emotions, the way the game is set up and the way college athletics is set up today, right now. And I think he does a tremendous job with that. And the other piece of that, and I won't leave this part out, he loves to compete. And I think that comes off of him into his players as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's going to be fascinating to see. Now the target is right there. I mean, there's nowhere to go but down when you're number one, right, Ty? I mean,
well, there's a on that hook 'em horns right there. There's a bullseye around it right now, right? Not the first time, won't be the last time.
That's right.
But you're right. And how do they handle that, right? And that's probably where you. How do they, as the coaches? That is an important piece, how the coaches handle it. But let me tell you what is also maybe even more importantly is that how do the kids handle it? What can they do when there's a little bit of failure? How do they handle that as an individual and as a team? How do they handle it with all those accolades and all that? Hey man, we all love to be told we're really great at something, right? We come home like, man, whoo, I feel pretty good right now, right? And then so when you hear that or you read it, what does it do to you? Does it make you kind of go, hey, I feel pretty good? Or does it go, okay, yeah, I'm going to go out and work that way. I'm going to treat myself as a champion. I'm going to look like a champion. I'm going to work like a champion. If I read it and I hear it and I see it, okay, I'm all right with that. But let me go out and do what I need to do. Let me keep going off the momentum that we had a year ago that we built. Because if we really are talking about winning national championships, you have to be able to look past, that hey, we're number one. We could walk around with a big, bulls on our chest. But I've watched these guys so far. I've been impressed with. They put their heads down and they go to work, and that's important.
When you look at the pitching, Pete Hansen probably going to be your Friday guy, and by the end of last season, you could argue he was the best pitcher on the team. And he's a lefty, and to me, his secret sauce, his superpower is commanding both sides of the plate, the outside of both sides.
Yep.
And just talk about what you like about Pete Hansen and what he brings as as the first of the weekend starters.
Let me tell you what he can throw it. He can throw that baseball on a gnat's hiney anywhere he wants to, on both sides. And you alluded to it, both sides of the plate. He commands, and you have to when you're left-handed. His velo wasn't up to where it was early in his career last year. And I think there were a lot of different things kind of building back up later in the year. You can see his stamina and his velo start to grow. If you watch that young man, he commands a fastball on both sides, on first base and third base side of the plate, right? What he also does, if you pay close attention, he throws two different breakers in there. he'll throw a backdoor breaker. He'll throw a breaker right off your back foot if you're a right-handed hitter. One's bigger than the other. One's a get me over. He changes speeds on his fastball, and he has the ability to elevate. He understands how to get the ball above, up in the top part of the triangle, to get guys to chase when they get in a two-strike situation, or if they get an over-aggressive approach to it. He understands how to go to the top of the triangle. And so he's in complete control of his hand delivery, his body delivery, and more importantly, he's in complete control of his brain delivery of the baseball. He knows what he's trying to do with it. He has a thought-out process of how he wants to pitch, how he can't pitch. And I just, if you're looking for a guy who's going to go out there on Friday or Saturday, whichever day it is, it probably looks like Friday. You leave that game, if he's gone 7 innings, he's going to be right at 105 pitches. And he's going to have, 5 strikeouts, 6 strikeouts, a lot of pop flies, a lot of ground balls in that infield. And if I was him, which I know I'm not, he knows, I'll be in there just trying to, induce contact and keep my pitch count down, and let that tremendous defense go to work every day for me. I can promise you that. There are times when pitchers try to get out there and they try to strike everybody out because they don't trust their defense. Man, you watch this guy, how many first pitch strikes he throws when he starts a game. It'll be impressive for you.
Well, and then Tristan Stevens, you talk about a guy who pitches to contact, works quickly with that power sinker ball.
Yep.
What do you like about him?
I'd love to play shortstop for him. I'd love to sit back there and get my 7 assists in the game and sit out there and have a lot of fun. And he just, he does. He sinks the ball. He actually has the ability to sink the ball on his fastball. He has the ability to sink the ball off his changeup as well. So he's got 2 pitches going 2 different directions. And then his breaker, which you want a pitcher to make the ball go 2 different ways, and which allows him to attack right-handed hitters and left-handed hitters. So you got to have an answer, because in college baseball, often enough, if you're a right-handed pitcher, you've got to have an answer to left-handed hitters, right? So sometimes people worry about throwing breakers down and in to left-handed hitters because it puts it right into what used to be called the nitro zone. And he has the ability to go in there and flip that changeup in there in 1-0 counts. 2-1 counts, where it's a positive count for the hitter, and he goes in there with, and just tremendous arm speed. It's complete deception to a hitter for him to go in there and just attack that changeup, and it's off speed. All else fails, he gets in a 1-1 count, runners on first and second, 1 out on a right-handed hitter, power hitter. He's going to run that 2-seam sinker in there and let him beat it right down the ground for a double play, and let Faltini and those guys turn double plays all day long.
Yeah, and they turned 40 of them. Faltini did last year.
Yeah,
a lot of them thanks to Tristan Stevens.
That's exactly right.
So Tanner Witt, we mentioned it. What a freshman season.
Yep.
And now if he moves up into that Sunday starter role, what do you like about him in that role?
Well, I love his emotion, and let me back up. I love his big power breaker and his downhill 94 mile an hour fastball. And I love his emotion on top of it. It's just hard to find big, physical young men like him that can just, that thing, Chip, when that thing's coming out of his hand, it is coming straight downhill. I made a joke actually to myself in the inter-squad game the other day. I don't remember who he was facing, and he was throwing his breaker. And it is really a hard charging, big, covers so much ground breaker. But when all else fails, he could get out there, honest to goodness, he could go out there, and if he could locate down and away fastballs at that angle, he don't have to throw a whole lot of too many other things. It's just a bad matchup for hitters. It didn't, most hitters don't have the ability to get their barrel in position to take on a fastball that's 93 miles an hour coming down straight downhill on the outer half of the plate. It's hard on any hitter. And I think when you see him get into a bind, if he does, which he will, when he gets into a bind, he'll go to his down and away fastball because it is powerful. And I was sitting behind the home plate kind of giggling because you can hear it coming. And you can kind of hear it sizzling, and you certainly could hear the catcher's mitt. And like I said, he got into a situation, he'd run his own somewhere, I don't remember where, and he just went right to that down away fastball, and it was powerful. So I love his emotion. He's really passionate about, he likes being out there. You saw that last year, right? He was fired up. Everybody in the crowd was fired up in the dugout. So I think if there was one thing I would say, how do you manage, those were 3 out, 6 out emotions, right? That's different. And big crowd, big moments, everybody's fired up, how do you manage efficiently? How do you manage that for 7 innings? How do
Right.
you get to that point? It's not about the physicality for him, right? Look how big he is. I mean, he's one of those guys that's got all kind of stamina in him. But trying to get him to calm down and get his emotions to last 7 innings, I think, is what they're probably spending some time on. And I'm sure they are, because he's been a starter before. But a lot of people don't know about him. He really didn't start pitching till later on in his career in high school, and so that is a really talented, fresh arm. And so what you see velo today isn't what you're going to see in May. You're going to see that thing about 2 to 3 mile an hour, or 2 mile an hour, even heavier and harder than what you're seeing right now or what you saw last year.
Well, one of the guys who I think Pierce is excited about coming off of injury from last year's Andre Duplantier,
Yep.
who can, throw the ball really hard, has a curveball. I haven't seen him. I don't know if you've seen him or what you've heard, but maybe he can fit into that Tanner Witt role this year.
Yeah, I think so. No, I have seen him when he was in high school. It's been a while, but man, he is some kind of athletic. A lot of times this isn't going to come out always right. There are a lot of good athletes that are pitchers. Actually, most pitchers are tremendous athletes, because with their skill level, what they're trying to do is not easy to do. But if you watch him, he's a really athletic kid with that baseball in his hand, and so that gives him the ability to repeat. And when you're athletic, and you might have a great arm, but when you're athletic and competitive, you got to be able, that arm's got to come back, and that hand delivery's got to come back over and over and over and over. And you got to know it's going to happen. And more times than not, when you watch the great ones, they're really good athletic people too. And so gives him a chance to repeat. And so I know they're counting on him. I know they're excited. He's got tremendous, again, you're going to hear baseball coming out of his hand. And it's a tremendous delivery, and it's got tremendous power to it. And so I know they're excited about him. I know he's a tremendous kid. I've spent a little bit of time around him. Excuse me. But he's one of those guys that, I don't know, he's excited to get back. He's anxious to get back out there, right? He's ready. And so that first pitch he gets out there in a real game is allowed to be 105 miles an hour at some point in time. And just because he's going to be ready to go.
Well, newcomers, you mentioned Jack O'Dowd from Vanderbilt, who can play third base if they need, because you've got Faltini at short, you've got Mitch Daly at second, as you mentioned, Melendez at first. But Jack O'Dowd is a name to keep an eye on. And then you've got Gavin Cash, a talented left-handed bat that I think they're excited about, and Joshua Stewart, a freshman pitcher. So there's going to be some, and Stewart may end up being their midweek starter or their Tuesday night starter. There's some excitement around the newcomers, and of course you mentioned Skylar Messinger from Kansas, who also can play third.
I think that they added the right pieces. They added some young arms too. I think so. If you're going to go after Texas right now, I think it's probably, what is it, maybe 7, if not 8 right-handed hitters in the lineup. So you need you need 2, left-handed options off the bench for a guy who just has a tremendous, the schedule they play is unbelievable. Which that's the other thing about David. He's not afraid to bet, by the way. He's not scared to go play anybody. So you're going to face power right-handed sliders. There may be times during the year he's going to need Cash and some of these guys to come off the bench that are left-handed hitters to come up with big hits, 2-out hits, and in the 8th inning for a pinch hitter for somebody, just because ball right-handed slider running away from the right-handed hitters are tough on him. So I do think a couple of those left-handers are going to be important for their success, and how good they do, translate late in games, or if somebody gets hurt. Having that, a left-handed bat to go in there in the game, and/or for a couple of games if somebody is out. I know you mentioned O'Dowd, who's, he's a baseball family guy, right? He got probably, his diaper probably had a baseball, drawn on it when he was born. And so they're just, again, going back to the recruiting thing, they bring in really good looking. I mean, they're physical. I mean, look at Faltini, his freshman year. Okay. Go out there and go look and see what he looks like now. Hodo the same way. Those guys, and all of them, Kennedy, all those guys, man, they're so physical looking. And, in baseball, it used to be, well, if you're little, you can still play this game. True, but not true. those guys, they may have some smaller stature guys, but they are just put together. And so they put the work in the weight room. I mean, again, their lineup, who they are, their backups, they've got the right mix to do some tremendous things. The new guys, and here we are. I'm sitting there looking at a note I wrote down. You ain't even talked about Nixon, and I mean, how solid was that guy? Do you remember the Friday night game? I went to Fort Worth. I had a weekend off. I went to the Friday night game of Texas and TCU at Fort Worth, and it was the first time COVID-wise. There were 80,000 people at that game. It seemed like it was so much fun. It was so cool that night. Texas and nursing a 1-run lead in the ninth. Witt gets in a little trouble, running first, second, nobody out. Nixon comes in and bam, 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 bam. He didn't throw a bad pitch. I think he threw 9 pitches or 11 pitches, something like that. They're out of the game. See, we're on the way to the bus, with a big win, a 1-run win on the road. And so to me, that guy's got tremendous heartbeat to be for those last few outs of the game. You can say what you want about the first 24 outs or 23. They're all important, every single one of them. But test your blood pressure when it's the last 3 every time and see what it does, and put a monitor on everybody's heart and see what that looks like. And that kid fits that role really well. If that's what they choose to go back and use him for. Last year, he was really good at it.
Quadzilla.
Yeah.
I mean, dude has quads like Earl Campbell.
It's unbelievable, right?
It's unbelievable. And he's got a head like a whiskey barrel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy just looks like he's ready for a bar fight,
Well, let me tell you what, he looks at. He gets out there on that mound, boy. It's like he sees nothing else. You never see his face wandering around. You never see a look of disbelief. You never see a look of, I don't know what's going on. I mean, it is just lasered in and give me the baseball. Here we go. We're going to win.
Yeah, and to find that as a freshman last year, Aaron Nixon, wow, that gives you confidence.
Chip,
I mean,
last 9 outs last year, or the last 6 outs of those games last year were freshmen. Yeah. In the biggest stage, and of course, Quintanilla I thought was great too for them. I thought he threw really well for them as well. But and you got to replace him. But those are young, good arms out there. In the biggest moment, it didn't faze them a bit.
You know how they take their vein and they shoot, ice water into their veins?
Yeah.
That's him.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So we've got a little bit of a changing landscape in the Big 12 too, with Schlossnagle going off to Texas A&M and Sarloos now coaching at TCU.
Yep.
Oklahoma State is getting some love in the preseason. And Texas Tech with Tadlock, they're always seemingly in the mix. But give me a couple thoughts on the Big 12 and what it looks like.
It's always interesting when there's a coach change. It goes, well, this is, I guess, obviously I'm about to make an obvious statement. If it either goes one of 2 ways, right? It either goes really great and, you take off with a new, enlightenment of a new coach, new energy, all the above. But and so for TCU, I think that is what everybody's going to pay attention to. They've got the athletes there because Jim and them did such an unbelievable job of recruiting, and Sarloos as well. And so it's going to be about the whether they take on Sarloos' personality or do they get stuck between both or whatever it may be. So it's really going to be interesting to watch. Oklahoma State, I mean, Holiday's he's done such an unbelievable. I think he does a great job, and that ballpark is, holy cow, through the roof, beautiful. And they've done an unbelievable job of recruiting. I think Seeley's up there now, who was the assistant at A&M. He's their hitting guy at Oklahoma State now, and actually Justin played for me one year in junior college. But he's a really good offensive teacher. So, I think Baylor. How good is Baylor going to be coming? They were right on the cusp last year of being a regional team. Felt like they kind of got left out last year. I know they got Rigney back this year, who was out last year. He'll be their Friday or Saturday starter on the mound. And so to me, it's going to always be a great baseball league. Well, how much longer they have it? It's always going to be a great baseball league, and everybody knows, regardless. how good everybody is in the league. Everybody, and I think Skip Johnson, who's a dear friend of mine, and he and Tim Tadlock and I were all junior college rats together, growing up, learning how to coach. And Tim, to me, has done an incredible job in Lubbock, Texas, recruiting baseball teams that are going to Omaha. I did, Tim's a tremendous baseball. Another one like David, a very, very solid, simplifies everything, goes out and finds great players, simplifies it. Skip, obviously, his personality, he's always going to have power arms. I've never seen a guy that had so many arms on the mound as Skip has always had. Even in junior college, he had guys he'd roll out there. You're like, where does this guy come from? And so it's going to be fun. It's going to be intriguing. It's always going to be competitive. And truthfully, everybody knows they're probably going to have to go. Those matchups on Sundays in the Big 12 are going to decide who goes to regionals and who wins Big 12 championships. Friday and Saturday are always great matchups. You can almost write down over time how those games are going to go and who's probably going to win. And over time, analytics are going to tell you a lot of how that's going to go. It's the Sunday games on that last third day. How much pen have you used? Did everything that's happened along the way? And those Sunday games are the ones, to me, from a coach's perspective, start to separate who's going to win a championship. But I can promise you this, it'll be great baseball. And here's the last thing on this part too. Not only in the Big 12, college baseball, I said this last year, college baseball was going to be the most mature baseball it's ever been last year because of the COVID year and the kids getting to stay another year, the draft with only an X amount of rounds, right? So we had guys playing college baseball last year, historically would have been playing, somewhere in Bend, Oregon. And so they were all playing. It was beautiful. It was unbelievable. I mean, the baseball that was played, the defense and the base running, last year that I got to watch was so fun to watch. It's the same thing this year. I mean, I'm watching guys, I watched Texas State, the alumni game the other day in Texas. They're older. Like, you got COVID sophomores, which are juniors and all this kind of stuff. And guys that are 21 and sophomores are 22. And there's a lot of these guys could be and should be playing minor league baseball somewhere. And they're playing college baseball. And I'm telling you what, I think college baseball is going to be played. I thought last year was played at a really high level. You saw the high stakes drama in Omaha, but leading up to Omaha, I thought college baseball was unreal. And again, I think this year it's going to be even that much more mature, that much more fun to watch, that much more intense. And man, you get down when it's played like that, you're going to see a lot of 4-3, 5-3 games. And I mean, it's going to be those ninth innings, those last 3 outs are going to be fun for college baseball all around the country, not just in the Big 12, all around the country, because it's going to be, I think, the most mature baseball college has ever seen.
I love it. I love it. I think that that's a great place to end it right there with Ty Harrington, the former Longhorn and 20-year coach at Texas State. Always love talking baseball with my man Ty Harrington. I also love how you said that Ty Madden had the greatest first name in the history of ever.
Man, I got to find a way to plug myself every once in a while too, right? I can do that, right?
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Hey, Ty, thanks so much for the time, man. Let's do it again throughout the season.
Always. I'm always available. I love to talk college baseball in general and always love to visit with you. And so I appreciate you guys having me on.
Appreciate it. There he is, Ty Harrington. And for Ty Harrington, I'm Chip Brown of Horns 24/7. We'll see you over at Horns 24/7. And until next time, thanks for listening and stay safe and keep the faith.